This is your year to ring in the deals and ring in the keys to your brand new ride during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford. Like a new 2025 Ford F-250 Super Duty with 0% APR for 60 months. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Just $495 a month lease for 36 months with no money down. This is your year, so drive into 2026 the right way during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Hey, everybody, welcome in to another back-to-back night of live podcast, live stream on the Pit Press Live. I'm your host tonight, Eric Moulton, and we're going to make this a real quick one, guys. I want to be very respectful of Chris Murray's time. Chris Murray comes to the show all the way from Nevada. Chris is a columnist for Nevada Sportsnet, has been covering Nevada sports athletics for just about 22 years or even more than that. Chris, thank you so much for joining us here on the Pit Press Live, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So, I'm just going to jump right into it, man. I know we're extremely familiar with Coach Alford. It's always such like an adventurous game when him and Noodles, Coach Neal, make their way back to Albuquerque in a place that they called home for a really long time, built a really strong program here. And, things change, time changes. We were actually fortunate enough to talk with Coach Alford yesterday. We had a feature story out on him earlier today. But I mean, what's the feeling like around Nevada and those neck of the woods most recently, kind of right around the basketball program?
I mean, I think people are optimistic about how the season's gone so far. I mean, you look at the beginning of the season, there were some rough games. They lost to UC Davis. That's a quad four loss. They probably should have lost to Pacific and Southern Illinois as well. Pacific missed 2-point blank layups to win the game in the final couple of seconds. And then Southern Illinois was up 3 on Nevada with 10 seconds to go. Nevada hits a 3 and sends it to overtime. So the beginning of the season, they were trying to figure things out. But, that's kind of normal. You have 10 newcomers. You didn't return any starters. I would say the last 10 games or so, they're playing a lot better. I mean, they're hitting a lot more threes. Their defense is a little bit more consistent. So I think Nevada needed a bounce back here. Last year did not go very well, 17-16 overall. They were 7th place in the Mountain West. That's, not what the expectations are for this program under Coach Alford with the investment they've made into basketball here. So there's been 2 NCAA tournament bursts during his tenure, this being his 7th season, but he did follow up probably the best era of Nevada basketball. Eric Musselman in 4 years, won 4 Mountain West titles, won 3 NCAA tournament bursts. They made it to a Sweet 16. They were ranked as high as number 5 in the nation, record-setting attendance. So all of this stuff that's been hard to follow up. Coach Alford certainly had some really good teams, but they haven't won a Mountain West title. They've not won a postseason game. So I think they're still waiting for that breakthrough, that getting over the hump, the getting to the championship level or advancing in the NCAA tournament. I think that was the expectation because of how much success Coach had at New Mexico. Just really hasn't come to fruition, but maybe this is the year to do it. They obviously were not picked very high in the preseason poll, 7th place. They're going to finish higher than 7th place. And if they can win this game tomorrow at New Mexico, they're in the thick of things in terms of the Mountain West championship race. So definitely a big game for Nevada to kind of continue to send messages that it is a team that isn't just a dark horse, but a legitimate contender.
Yeah, that's one term that I've used pretty frequently is dark horse with this Nevada team. But can you just talk about kind of the makeup, the personnel, maybe some guys that maybe coming in early on in the season, you guys didn't really expect to turn out and play well, that actually have turned it on and played really well as of lately. Like guys like Elijah Price is kind of turning a lot of heads. Comer is another guy. So talk about the personnel a little bit and maybe some of the key X factors as we head into this matchup with UNM.
I mean, Elijah Price was someone Nevada expected a lot out of. He was one of the best freshmen in the Mountain West last year at Fresno State. That obviously wasn't a winning ecosystem. So the question about him was, could he do it in a winning environment? And he certainly has been able to do that. He's among the leaders in the Mountain West and, offensive rebounds, total rebounds. He's first in free throws attempted, first in free throws made. And a lot of his game is getting to the free throw line. He doesn't have a ton of range. He's getting better finishing around the rim, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily a strength. He's just a guy who plays really hard, potentially the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year, and he gets to the free throw line 7, 8, 9 times a game. So that's kind of his game, and he's been kind of as advertised. Tayshaun Comer, he came from Evansville, lead guard, originally from Indiana. Obviously, Coach Alford's got roots back there. There were expectations he was going to be the starting point guard and put up big stats, and he's not the most consistent in terms of his efficiency. When he is efficient, Nevada's really hard to beat, but there are also some games in there where kind of just floating and not making a huge impact, and he kind of dictates how well Nevada plays from an offensive perspective. Nevada's best transfer has been Corey Camper Jr. He came from UTEP. 2 years at the junior college level, 2 years at UTEP. So he was kind of out of eligibility until everybody got that extra year if they were a JUCO player, and he ended up using that at Nevada. So, 17 points per game roughly in the first 9 games. Then he picked up a back injury, missed an entire month. He's been back for now 6 games. The first 2 back was a little bit shaky, but the last 4 back, 23 points per game. He's shooting better than 60% from 3 in those games. So, he's been really effective as a scorer. He was Conference USA All Defensive Team, was kind of the third scorer for UTEP, but he's showing a lot more of his game. He was a prolific scorer in high school, prolific scorer in the junior college ranks. So those are really your top 3 guys in terms of transfers, and your top 3 guys in terms of dictating how Nevada basketball is going to play on a given night. So the Wolfpack has a lot of depth. That's been one of its positives. They have 8, 9, 10 guys who can give you 2 or 3 baskets. They're not really dictated by just one player, whereas last year it was Kobe Sanders and it was Nick Davidson, 2 all-conference players, and if they didn't play well, Nevada didn't win. That's not necessarily the case this year. You've seen Tyler Rollison step up and win some games for Nevada. You've seen Peyton White, a freshman who's had some really big performances. Vaughn Weems of late, junior college transfer, is number 2 junior college scorer last season. He's had some really big performances as well. So, it's not just on one guy to go out and win a game. And I think maybe the biggest surprise for Nevada is they've been very good at shooting the three-pointer. I mean, they're top 25 in the nation in three-point accuracy. In Mountain West play, they're first, better than 40%. If you took just the stats of the guys who had played at the D1 level in their entire career before this season, it was combined 31% from 3. So that's been the most positive development. Obviously, New Mexico wants teams to shoot three-pointers. That could play to Nevada's favor given how they've shot the ball of late.
Yeah, now let's talk about Nevada's resume up to this point, right? I was kind of looking at just some of their bracketology mix, but really just what their overall makeup looks like. 0-2 in quad 1 games, 2-2 in quad 2, 9-0 in quad 3, but they don't really have that signature win, a Q1 on the road or even a Q1 at home. I know we'll probably get into more resume talk second half of this show, but talk about overall schedule, maybe some of the key wins that they have. And you did mention some key losses like the one against UC Davis. So I feel like they've probably started to pick up their play a little bit more as we get into conference play. But just overall through the season, what can you say about their schedule outlook?
Nevada's really relied on the MTE events to try and build kind of the quad 1 and quad 2 category and non-conference play. The thing that they do well is they don't schedule a lot of bad teams. So it's a lot of like quad 3 games, as you see with, I think, 9-0 in quad 3 games. And then, usually they'll spike a couple of quad 1 or quad 2 games from the MTE events. And, this year the MTE event was okay. They played Washington, which was a quad 2 game. They got blown out in that game. And then they played San Francisco and they won that one. That was a blowout victory, but San Francisco's not that, they're not a quad 1, quad two kind of opponents. So, they beat UC Santa Barbara, UC San Diego, they've beaten. They went on the road to Santa Clara. That was a big game, and they lost by 15 in that one. So I think that's the knock on Nevada. The Wolfpack has not beaten a team ranked higher than it in the Ken Palm standing. So losses to Santa Clara, Washington, San Diego State, Utah State. Those are the only teams it's played that are higher in the Ken Palm rankings. Hasn't won any of those games, and really only the San Diego State game was like super close. So they've taken care of business from teams that are worse than it on paper, but you don't get into the NCAA tournament by doing that. So Nevada's probably like in the 15 to 20 out of the tournament field right now. The Mountain West isn't the strongest. I think if Nevada goes like 16-4, 17-3, which is a tough task, it might be able to get into the at-large mix, but there's not a ton of meat on the bone when it comes to the non-conference schedule because of the losses to Santa Clara and to Washington. Those are kind of the marquee games. And then also the loss to UC Davis, which right now is sitting at a quad 4 loss. Now, like I said, they probably should have lost to Pacific and Southern Illinois, and those would have been quad 3 or quad 4 losses. The fact they were able to skate by in those games does keep their hopes alive. But the ceiling, I think, of this team is still a little bit in question until they go out and beat a team that is ranked higher. That's an opportunity against New Mexico, San Diego State, Utah State. Lost at Utah State in a game that was pretty close until the last 5 or 6 minutes. San Diego State, that game came down to the wire. That one was at home. If Nevada's going to win the Mountain West, it's going to have to win some of these games. And if it's going to get into the NCAA tournament, it's going to have to win some of these games. So that's really the last kind of check mark that this team needs to check off to be able to prove that it's a contender in the conference or prove that it might be able to get to an NCAA tournament.
Yeah, well, we were talking just backstage. I was actually complimenting you on just the way you've covered not only the Nevada athletic program, basketball particularly, but the way that you've been covering the Mountain West in general. And you wrote a really interesting article, and it's kind of a really cool segment that you have on kind of the bubble watch. And so I'm bringing it up here on screen just for everyone to check that out. If you don't follow Chris on Twitter, he can be found at what's your hashtag
Just by Chris Murray. So pretty simple there.
Yeah, but you've been covering the Mountain West for a long time, again, covering Nevada for 22 years. Talk about this bubble watch, segment or piece that you've been putting together the last couple of weeks, because I think it's really interesting, and you kind of highlight some of the top teams and just kind of what's happened over the last week and kind of where the needle tends to move with metrics, measurables, things like that.
Yeah, so it's something I put out every Friday. So I just update the page. It basically looks at the NCAA tournament contenders in the conference. So in previous years, it's been like 6, 7 teams deep. So, you look at the Ken Palm rankings, the net rankings, where they're at the bracketology, CBS, ESPN, the bracket matrix, and then just kind of a breakdown of, where they're kind of sitting right now. And, that's the thing to love about the Mountain West. Obviously, it's been elite in men's basketball the last 4 or 5 years, at least 4 bids each of the previous 4 years. They had that one year where they had 6. They have legitimately good teams that can go to an NCAA tournament and win games. It is a shame that this is kind of the end of the Mountain West as we know it. I think it will continue to be a very good conference with Nevada, New Mexico, UNLV, Grand Canyon kind of leading the way. Hawaii is a pretty decent program as well. They're going to lose some very, very good programs. San Diego State, Colorado State, Utah State, Boise State. Those are teams that have been in the NCAA tournament pretty regularly. I mean, if you look right now, Utah State was in really good position. They were like a 5, 6, 7 seed until the back-to-back losses that they had against Grand Canyon and UNLV. That's another team that doesn't have a lot of quad 1 success. So they're still in the tournament right now, but it's a lot more marginal than it was just a week ago. I think you look at New Mexico, you look at San Diego State. For me, New Mexico has a better resume on paper. I know they lost that head-to-head matchup, but it was on the road, and that was a close game. But they did more in non-conference play. Both of those teams are kind of last 4 in, first 4 out kind of situations. And then Nevada's kind of the 4th team. It's going to take a lot to get the Wolfpack in as an at-large bid. So you're probably looking at maybe a 2 or 3 bid Mountain West. I guess a worst-case scenario, if Utah State continues to slide, maybe it's 1 bid, but I'm guessing it'll be at least 2, maybe 3, depending on how the Mountain West tournament goes. I think you look at Utah State, that's a legitimate NCAA tournament team. You look at San Diego State, they're going to get a bump up because of the pedigree. That team plays a great amount of defense, and I feel like their offense is a lot better. They play with more pace. New Mexico, I mean, they've been awesome. To return 0 points and be as good as they've been, relying on three really good freshmen is not something that was expected. And Nevada was picked really low in the conference and is having a lot of success. So it's really fun to watch these games. Day in and day out. Grand Canyon's been spectacular the last couple of weeks. UNLV kind of coming out of nowhere to win at Utah State. So this is a conference that is still really 7 or 8 teams deep. The bottom's not that great with San Jose State and Air Force, but outside of that, you've seen Fresno State improve. You've seen improvement from Wyoming. So it's just a great conference to be able to cover. And yeah, we do have a lot of coverage about, conference-wide stuff because there's definitely a lot of interest in this conference when it comes to men's hoops.
Yeah. Now, and you wrote another piece today, actually, just kind of previewing the UNM Nevada game. You had 3 kind of topics, or I guess 3 keys to the game. One of your keys was on figuring out how to slow down Jake Hall. Another one was Nevada's got to get hot from 3, and as of recent, they've shot the ball really well from the outside, and just kind of factoring in how UNM's defensive style and Eric Olin's scheme defensively almost kind of might play into Nevada's favor because they do allow a lot of 3-point shot attempts, but teams that have come in that have, I guess you say, have shot the ball well from the outside throughout the season have not come in and shot the ball well against UNM on the 3-point line. And I think it's just making shots more challenging to take. But can you elaborate just on kind of your 3 keys to the game for Nevada?
I think the 3-point shooting is really interesting because you don't see a team that gives up 28 3-pointers per game on purpose, more or less, and be as effective in limiting their percentage. I mean, 29% opponents are shooting against New Mexico from beyond the arc. So that's obviously great scouting. Like, you're having specific players take 3-pointers from areas that they don't want to take the 3-pointer. Nevada's been difficult to guard in recent games because this is a team that got to the free throw line a ton the entire season, and they don't turn the ball over. They've been like top 10 in the nation in turnover percentage. So the formula was really like make them hit threes, but now they're hitting threes. So if you can get to the free throw line, you don't turn it over and you're hitting threes, then you're an elite offense. So that will be interesting to see if Nevada can carry over what we've seen in recent games. It's one thing hitting threes against Air Force and San Jose State when it's going to be a blowout and every possession, is not quite as crucial. It's a different thing to do it against New Mexico. But Nevada did shoot the 3 really, really well against Utah State. The one area they struggle is they're not good at all at finishing around the rim. It's a very poor percentage around the rim, and that's why they need to get to the free throw line. So yeah, that's the first key to me is can Nevada hit double-digit threes? I feel like that's required to win this game. The second key, Jake Hall, I like to look at splits of players. When New Mexico's won, Jake Hall's been super good and super efficient. And when they've lost, he's been not as good and not efficient at all. So, if you're Nevada, you have to focus on making him uncomfortable from beyond the arc. I think like 67% of his shots come from 3. You cannot let him get heated up because then everything falls into place for New Mexico. The third key is obviously keeping the composure in front of what is expected to be a very large crowd. Obviously, Coach Alford going back there, he generally gets booed when he goes back to Albuquerque. So it could be 15,000 people there. And it's not just the composure against the fans, it's the composure against the pressure. New Mexico, 15 turnovers created per game. Like I said, Nevada doesn't turn the ball over, but when they went to Utah State last week, they really did look frazzled offensively for the beginning portion of that game. They did have 14 turnovers, and this is a team that's averaging around 9 turnovers. So I don't feel like they handled Utah State's environment and pressure super well offensively. They did play really good defense in that game. Will Nevada be able to get into its offensive sets against New Mexico's pressure? They had 18 steals in their last game against Fresno State. And will they get comfortable in terms of not allowing New Mexico runs? Utah State had a couple like 8-0, 10-0 runs in that game that really was the difference. Can Nevada stay consistent enough offensively to ensure that the Lobos don't go on this run that the Wolfpack can't recover from? I mean, you go to last year, Nevada had that game won in overtime until a late turnover, and then Nelly Jr. Joseph getting that scramble ball and throwing it in. So they were able to keep their composure for the majority of that game. They did get to the free throw line a lot in that game. I thought the refs had a very, very quick whistle. The Wolfpack would love a quick whistle on this one. So those are kind of the 3 keys. Hit double-digit threes, limit Jake Hall's efficiency, and then third, limit the turnovers, don't allow any big runs. If Nevada does that, then it's going to see itself in the game late in the second half.
Yeah, break down Nevada. Like, if you had to choose an X factor offensively for the Wolfpack to come in? Who's the guy that's going to carry the load from a scoring perspective?
I mean, I think carrying the load is going to be Tayshaun Comer, and it's going to end up being Corey Camper Jr. as well. Those are kind of the lead guys who have a diversity to their offensive game. They've got mid range, they can make 3-pointers, they can get to the hoop. I think Elijah Price is more like a hustle play kind of guy. Like they can dump it into him and be like try and get fouled, but he doesn't have like a variety of moves down low. I think the X factor is Vaughn Weems. This is a guy who, from the Seattle area, didn't have any D1 interest because he wasn't a good enough shooter. Had to go to the junior college level. Went to North Idaho College, which has sent a lot of players to the D1 level. A couple of Florida State who have been very successful. Number 2 scorer in the junior college level last year. I think he's shooting like 52% from three. So the fact he didn't get recruited out of high school because he couldn't shoot, he shot really well from three in junior college, and it's translated over to Nevada. He missed the San Diego State game that Nevada lost. He had an illness. They really missed him. So both he and then Caleb Lowry starts, doesn't play a ton of minutes. He was a 5-year player at the NAIA level. He was the player of the year in the NAIA a couple of times, like a 3 or 4-time All-American. If those guys can give Nevada some offense, then that's when the Wolfpack becomes very, very dangerous. Like I said, Tyler Rollison, he started 8 games last year at the end of the season. He's kind of been missing most of the year, but he went out and he won the game against Fresno State and won the game against Colorado State for Nevada. So you've just seen these random guys pop up and have really good performances. And that's kind of what Nevada has been living on lately. It's not just one star guy. Corey Camper Jr. is probably that star guy, but I don't know that Nevada has a first team all Mountain West player. They've just got a lot of players who have been chipping in specific games and kind of helping out when another guy has an off night.
Yeah, the makeup of both teams in this matchup is very interesting because they're both very deep. They get contributions from some of their key guys, but then another guy that you're not really planning for or preparing for could easily come in and score 10 to 15 points and really impact a game. But some of the guys, like you mentioned, the true freshmen that the Lobos have pretty much leaned on most of the season. You talked about Jake Hall, Uriah Tenet as another guy, kind of that spark off the bench type player. But then Tomislav Buljan, I don't think anybody, not even us, the Lobo followers, Lobo faithful, could have anticipated having a freshman come in overseas, not knowing a lot about him beforehand, but just come in and shake up the whole league and kind of take everyone by storm. So kind of what's been your initial analysis of Buljan's game?
I mean, I just think they've done a fantastic job there. I mean, we did see a couple of years ago when Danny Sprinkle took over, he returned 0 points at Utah State and they won the Mountain West title. So I guess it's not impossible, but when you basically don't return anybody, it just seems so difficult in a conference like the Mountain West to go out there and have success in year one. But, spiking these 3 freshmen, obviously they got some really good transfers as well. And they've got a coach who knows how to win. I mean, his winning percentage kind of speaks to it all. So I've been very impressed with how they've played. I mean, to be able to go to Viejas Arena and be leading that game late, that's not something a lot of teams are going to be able to do. They obviously took care of business really well against Grand Canyon at home, winning that one by like 20 plus points. So, they got some really good non-conference wins to be able to beat a VCU team, Mississippi State, Santa Clara, a team that, destroyed Nevada. They went out and destroyed. So, they've played really good basketball from basically the start of the season. I know they probably want that New Mexico State game left, but, in contention for coach of the year, based on how things have gone down there in New Mexico. And, I'm sure it was hard losing Coach Pitino because he did do such a good job. And, losing Donovan Den as well, not an easy thing to swallow, but for them to be able to play as well as they have has been really cool to see. And, they're playing, to me, as good as anybody in the Mountain West. I think you could put GCU in that category with their wins over Utah State and their win over San Diego State a couple of nights ago. I think the Aztecs have played really fantastically as well. And I mean, if you're Nevada, you're coming off back-to-back blowouts. I know it's Air Force and it's San Jose State, but I feel like the thing that's special about Nevada to me is they do feel like a team. I think there were some issues in the locker room last year. The NIL leaked, and that's kind of when the season kind of went downhill when everybody figured out how much everybody was making. This team doesn't seem to care about that. This team seems to care about what do I have to do to help us win. And I think that's made this refreshing for Steve Alford just to kind of get back to a more stable culture, a more team first oriented culture. And it feels like just watching New Mexico that they have a very similar approach as well. It's not this guy needs to get 20 points to be happy. It's they got to do what they need to do to be able to win a game. And I think, when you get freshmen, they're happy to be playing at the college level. They're not selfish. They're not thinking about themselves. And they've gotten the right transfers. That can be tricky. Sometimes you can get a talented player, but it just doesn't fit. But it seems like all the pieces kind of locking in for both of these teams entering this game.
Yeah, very interesting takes, man. Again, for our viewers, listeners, we are speaking with Chris Murray, columnist for Nevada Sportsnet. Been covering Nevada basketball for the last 22 years. So again, man, I want to thank you for joining the show. I got two more questions for you. The last one's going to be somewhat of a softball question, but I did want to ask you about kind of the direction of the athletic department, not necessarily just around basketball. But I know that they're investing, they're partnering with a lot of people kind of outside the university walls. But like they're having a new arena built and they're having a new practice facility kind of take off. I think that was built over the summer. Can you tell us, or at least update us on what's been going on in Nevada's world?
Yeah, I mean, Nevada hasn't had a ton of success since getting to the Mountain West. They did win a couple of Mountain West titles last year in baseball and softball, and that snapped a 3-year drought without winning a championship. It's never really been a school that's funded athletics at a high level. There's no state income tax here, so higher education's a little bit underfunded. So then college athletics is a little bit underfunded. So they don't necessarily have that base of university, state, and student fee money that some of these other Mountain West schools have had. When they moved into the Mountain West in 2012, they didn't really fund the department up to the Mountain West standard. They kind of stayed with the WAC budget. Now you go back to 2020, Nevada hired a new president, Brian Sandoval. He was a 2-term governor at Nevada. So he was a very popular, moderate Republican, but he was a graduate of the university. He's a big Wolfpack fan. He grew up in Reno, and he's really invested into athletics. He's given athletics an extra $10 million a year the last 4 or 5 years to try and get Nevada up to the Mountain West median. He's worked to improve a lot of the facilities, specifically in the women's sports, which are really underfunded. And then you look at, the big item tickets that are coming on board. So the Grand Sierra Resort's a local casino. They're building a $435 million basketball first arena. Probably will have a minor league hockey team where the Nevada Wolfpack's going to play starting in 2 seasons. It's a $1 billion redevelopment of the entire resort. But this about 10,500 seat capacity arena is going to be the home of Nevada basketball. That is a game changer for the Wolfpack, for Steve Alford. This is a school that has not had an indoor facility for football since joining the Mountain West. When it joined the Mountain West, every other cold weather school already had that. Like 14 years later, Nevada finally has that, broke ground. The structure is going to be in place starting in March, so that'll be done this summer. That's a $28 million project. So there's definitely been a step toward investing into Nevada athletics, both from a facility standpoint, from a budget standpoint, from a coaching salary standpoint. And I think you step into this new Mountain West, which loses some of the best members, some of the biggest budgeted members. I think Nevada's expectation moving forward is that it's going to be an elite Mountain West school with these investments and with this lesser competition. And I think what they're thinking is that's then a step to becoming an elite group of 6 athletic department. So it's an interesting time for Nevada because there hasn't been that success. I'd say like the last 3 or 4 years, they've been laying the groundwork. And I think now there are going to be expectations that you should be top 3 in your conference or you're not going to be here coaching anymore. So, I think Nevada's momentum is in the right direction, but the football program needs to be fixed. It's the football program that went 2-10, 2-10, 3-10, and 3-9 in the last 4 seasons. If your football program's not healthy, your athletic department's not healthy. So Jeff Choate, entering his 3rd year in 2026, was previously the head coach at Montana State, did a really good job there. He thinks that he's starting to get some traction, but until football comes online, I think it's going to be a grind for Nevada athletics. So, certainly Steve Alford's done a really solid job. They've been a top 4, 5, 6 school in the Mountain West in men's basketball since he got there. Maybe not quite to the level everybody was expecting, but really, football needs to improve a lot. And I think the expectation is it will as they get into the 2026 version of the Mountain West.
Yeah, football, man. Football is what kind of tore up the Mountain West basketball ecosystem that everyone came to love. But last question for you, man, and really, I think you touched on it in your article. I know that you had a prediction for the Nevada UNM game. Do you want to share what your prediction was?
What was it, like 79-73 New Mexico, I believe? I mean, a team wins 22 straight games at home. I feel like you got to pick them. I think there's like a vibe in town that Nevada's going to go down there and upset the Lobos. I think people are pretty confident with how Nevada's playing. And I think, the format of how New Mexico wants to defend might play into Nevada's hands. But there's been some really classic games here. We mentioned last year's game at the Pit with Nelly Jr. Joseph. You go back 2 years before that, Keenan Blackshear hit a jumper with a couple seconds left. There's been some classic games here in Reno. There was a double overtime game. There was a controversial, I guess, like elbowing call that
I
Nevada got
remember
some
that.
free throws out of. New Mexico was ranked at the time. The Wolfpack stormed the court. And I think it was the year after that, Jamal Mashburn hit a couple of 3-pointers, a couple of daggers when Nevada was leading late to lead to victory for the Lobos. So I don't know if it's because Coach Alford is now here, but this rivalry seems to be taking off. I mean, you go way back to when Coach Neal was coaching, and Nevada came back from, what was it, like 24 points or something crazy at the Pit, 105, 104 in overtime. Jordan Caroline had 45 points. So I picked the 6-point game. Maybe I should have picked like a triple overtime game based on how these teams have played each other of late.
Well, it's pretty close to the spread. The spread just came out. According to DraftKings, it's Lobos favored by 7.5. So
Okay.
you're kind of right on spot. And yeah, man, there have been some really good games. I remember in the Paul Weir days, I want to say this is like 2018 or 2019 when Nevada was ranked in the top 10 and they came to Albuquerque. It was a down year for UNM, but UNM somehow figured it out late, made some shots down the stretch, and they're bright yellow with their Zia symbol logos on the jersey. So it's another retro game. The Lobos will be wearing their retro, like 90s styled uniform. So everyone here in Albuquerque and New Mexico are looking forward to that. But again, Chris Murray with the Nevada Sportsnet, columnist for them, been covering Nevada basketball for the last 20 plus years. Chris, again, man, I want to thank you for taking time out of your Friday night to join us here in the Pet Press, and we will let you go. And do you want to let our fans, followers know again where they can find you?
Yeah, just NevadaSportsNet.com. I'm at by Chris Murray. I'll be watching this game from home, but we all have a reporter out there, Mike Stephenson. So if you want to see the Nevada perspective on the game, go to NevadaSportsNet.com after the game, and we'll have our interviews, game stories, and things of that nature up on the website.
So again, thank you, man. We'll be watching the game too. Well, I'll probably bug you down the stretch here, man, just to see like how this whole bracketology thing that you got going on, see how it all shakes out. But for our viewers at home, thanks again for tuning in to another live episode of the Pit Press Live. We'll catch you all tomorrow at the Pit. Everyone have a good night, and we will talk to you soon.